Hey everyone, Matt Dingledine here with the Greenville Jazz Collective, here at my studio at Watsonwood Music to talk to you a little bit about an exercise I like to call thirds and sevenths. It's a very simple concept, I hope you'll find, but it's a very valuable and fundamental aspect to learning how to improvise over jazz chords and as well as lots of other kinds of progressions that you might come across. Here's what it sounds like. Okay, we are going to be jamming on the tune Autumn Leaves today in the key of E minor. Lots of other keys you could do this with, and in fact, this exercise is really great for getting used to tunes that you're familiar with in other keys on whatever instrument you're playing. This is what it sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the first half of Autumn Leaves, 16 measures. Okay, this is a simple exercise. We're only playing 2 notes per chord. We're playing half notes on beats 1 and 3, at least for starters. The idea is, well, you're going to play the third of each chord, followed by on beat 1, followed by on beat 3, the 7th of each chord. So if you're not familiar with Autumn Leaves, go get a lead sheet, type in Autumn Leaves, lead sheet. We're in the key of E minor here. You can also, most backing tracks you'll come across on YouTube will also have some options for you in the key of E minor. Okay, so the first chord in Autumn Leaves, key E minor concert, is A minor 7. So we need to find the third of A minor 7. If you don't know how to do that, it's not too hard. I can get this to you. It's going to be a whole step above A plus a half step. Whole step plus half step, a step and a half above any note is a minor third or a flat third interval, and that's what we need for A minor 7. So we've got C is the third of A minor, and we need to calculate the flat 7th of A minor 7th. If you don't know how to do that, it's simple. Simply subtract a whole step from the root. So a whole step below A is G. Wouldn't you know it, the first 2 notes we're going to play are C on beat 1 and G on beat 3. It'll sound just like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all we're trying to do at the moment. Lather, rinse, repeat. We're going to do the same thing for the next chord, which is D7, some type of D dominant 7th chord. That means we need to find the major third of D. Dominant chords have a major third. So if you don't know how to do that, let me help you. Where a minor chord is a step and a half above the root, for A minor 7, we found C, we need to find 2 whole steps above the root. Well, 2 whole steps above D is D to E is 1 whole step. E to F sharp is 2 whole steps of D to F sharp. F sharp is the third of D7. Now, D dominant 7th also has a flat 7th, just like A minor 7 has a flat 7th. So if you don't know how to do that, you will have learned from my previous instruction on A minor 7 that you need to go to a whole step below D, which is C. Oh, C again. So the first 2 chords, this exercise should sound like this for the first 2 chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. Okay, we're going to continue doing that for the next 2 chords, G major 7 and C major 7. So the third of G major 7 has a major third, so that's 2 whole steps, which is B. G to B is a major third. And major 7 has a major 7th. 7th, I think I said that right. That's just a half step below the root. So if you're on G, going down a half step will give you F sharp. That's the 7th of G major 7. For C major 7, 2 whole steps above C is E. That's the third. And a half step below C is B. That's the 7th. So now we've got the first 4 chords sounding like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. I am playing that bass note underneath just to give you context so we can all hear that together. You want to practice this quite a bit. This is a very common progression in jazz. So you can really get very comfortable with this, and you'll see this coming around, this movement, in lots of different tunes, lots of different keys. So consider practicing that quite a bit. Now we're ready to look at the second 4-measure phrase of Autumn Leaves. This is the 5th measure of Autumn Leaves in the key of E minor. We have an F sharp minor 7 flat 5 chord, also known as half diminished by many people, not everyone. Okay, the 3rd of F sharp minor 7 flat 5 is a flat 3rd. Well, that's a step and a half. Step and a half above F sharp is G sharp to A. So find yourself an A anywhere you like. And the flat 7th of F sharp minor 7 flat 5, that is a mouthful, is a whole step below F sharp. A whole step, or 2 frets on the guitar, is E. So the flat 7th of F sharp is E. Okay, those are the 2 notes we need for F sharp minor 7 flat 5. The next chord is B7. We'll call it B7 flat 9. That should work most of the time. The 3rd of this chord is 2 whole steps above the root. That's the major 3rd. That's D sharp, B to D sharp. Okay, the flat 7th of B, a whole step below the root, is A. So we're back to that A that we also had in F sharp minor 7 flat 5. All right, this will lead us to the E minor chord, E minor 7. You could also think about E minor 6, and in fact, that's where I'd like us to go today, because we're actually going to play E minor 6 for this. There's a reason for that, but just take my word for it. You do have options here, but this is just such a nice sound. Consider getting this sound into your playing. So here's the 3rd of E minor is G. That's the flat 3rd, a step and a half. And we're going to play the 6th on this E minor 6 chord. That's going to be a C sharp. That is a step and a half below the root, going backwards if you like to think about it. So here is the progression to E minor, the second 4-measure phrase of Autumn Leaves. It should sound like this with this exercise. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's our first kind of pass on the first 8 measures of Autumn Leaves. Now this is not meant to be some sort of instant presto, how about that, now I can jazz, but rather a very basic, very fundamental exercise to get inside of how the chords in a certain progression move from one to the next. This is the concept here that we're really exercising is voice leading. Voice leading is the idea that the notes in A minor 7, for instance, the notes in one chord will go to the notes in the next chord with a very small distance. We want to take advantage of that. It sounds really good to our ears. It allows us to make smooth lines across the changes, as opposed to feeling like we have to start in one place and then go, which could be nice and cool and everything. However, that is quite limiting if we don't see and really understand how to move from one chord to the next in a very smooth kind of resolution by half step or whole step. And that is one of the most important things about voice leading, is that we're looking to move in a small distance. These 3rds and 7ths, wouldn't you know it, do that for us quite effectively. Check this out. So I'll play those 3rds and 7ths and look at how I go from one chord to the next again. So A minor 7, the next note that I play after this 7th of A minor 7 is F sharp, just a half step lower. So I've made the change from A minor 7 to this D dominant 7th chord by a very small resolution, a very small distance to resolve. That's quite effective. And then again, the 7th of D, which is C, goes down or resolves down a half step to B, another small distance and resolution. That's really effective and central to how we want to make and construct jazz lines, bebop lines. The other thing that's really valuable about this exercise is it's forcing you to play the notes in the chords. We're not just playing scales and approximating changes. We are picking the 2 most important notes for each chord and playing them in a fashion that will give us a very strong voice leading. So why are the third and the seventh the strongest notes? Well, you change the third or the seventh, you change the chord. It's that simple. Thirds and sevenths are like fingerprints or signatures of each chord. A minor seventh chord has a flat third and a flat seventh. A major seventh chord has a natural third and natural seventh. You change one of those notes by half step or whole step, then you've got a different chord. And playing jazz means that we want to reflect the harmony very accurately. And by limiting ourselves to thirds and sevenths, you're really getting inside what is essential to those chords. I highly recommend that you get really comfortable at playing your thirds and sevenths, very quickly even. You might try to test yourself at up tempos. Say 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Again, just the first 16 measures of Autumn Leaves so far. One of the exercises that I like to get my students to do, once they've they've memorized maybe the first way they want to put those thirds and sevenths together, is can you start to move around on the fretboard using this exercise? So you may not do it the same way every time. Now I chose in my demonstration to go from the third of A minor 7 up to the seventh of A minor 7. Well, could have gone down as well, right? Which would have led me in a different path, because the F sharp in D7 is still just a half step below G, the seventh of A minor 7. So I could, instead of always playing it like this, we might want to play it like this. Here's how I might spend some time just warming up with these thirds and sevenths. This far, you're doing great. I know there's a lot of talk about sevenths and thirds and relationships of chords, but this is one of the most valuable ways to get inside of playing this music, jazz music. It's a little bit of an adaptation if you're not used to it at first, but once you get the hang of it, your ears start to hear it. You can calculate these relationships of thirds and sevenths to the chords you're playing over much more quickly. And it becomes a tool that will help you really get inside of all the tunes that you want to learn how to play. So I highly recommend you do that. There are a couple of extra things that we can put on top of that that will give us even more expression. So for instance, one of the simple things I like to do is in the eighth measure of Autumn Leaves, we have a second measure of E minor 7. So the seventh and eighth measures of Autumn Leaves are E minor 7. E minor 6 if you like. Well, instead of staying on that chord for 2 whole measures, we could try to see if there's another change, another chord or harmony that would lead us back to the ninth measure, which is another A minor 7. Well, wouldn't you know it, a chord that does that really well, a really common way that this is done, is to use E7 flat 9, for instance. Okay, so instead of playing G and C sharp for 2 measures from our E minor 6 chord, I can play G and C sharp for the 7th measure, And then G sharp is the third of E7, and D is the flat seventh of E7. And that voice leads with a little extra tension, gives us this nice, like a resolution. Feels like we've arrived back somewhere. So that's an option. It's very common to use that kind of dominant chord to take you to the place you're trying to get to, especially if you've got two measures of the same chord. We're kind of, as jazz musicians, trying to find another dominant chord to lead us to the next chord. We're looking for some kind of extra harmony to keep the harmonic movement going forward. It's just interesting, hopefully. One of the next layers that I like to add here is I like to add roots and fifths, which essentially gives us the full arpeggio, or basic arpeggio for the seventh chords. So I can start with the third and then the seventh. Well, that's we're playing half notes. What if I wanted to play some roots and some fifths? Now I can get all of the notes in the arpeggio together in one measure, and I can really start to get even more melodic interest going on. So I'm building, it's just the next layer. We can keep adding more notes, but we're putting priority on the most important notes first. The chord tones, specifically thirds and sevenths, which are guide tones. Those are the notes that define the chord. The root and the fifth, well, those are the remaining chord tones after the third and seventh. And then from there, we can start adding in some passing tones, either diatonic or scalar passing tones, as well as maybe chromatic passing tones. Gives a little bit more spice. So we start to appreciate all the tools that we have at our disposal with a little bit more clarity and kind of priority. We need chord tones in the right place, and then we can start to decorate those chord tones. It's a really common concept for helping musicians build their own jazz lines and helping them improvise better. So this is what, if I just take thirds and sevenths and add in roots and fifths, this is the kind of thing that I might get with that. So the vast majority of what I just played was really just chord tones. I had a couple of passing tones here and there, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. The important thing here is, in my opinion, is that we're putting priority, again, on the most important notes, the notes that define those chords. So if I can just play just by myself, I can reflect the harmony, and you can hear those chords moving from one to the next, just because I'm thoughtful about how those notes in one chord resolve via very small distance to the notes in the next chord. I might jump up the guitar, but really those notes are still very closely related.